Hello. I made a DNA test and found my kids aren't mine. You ever get that feeling like your whole life is a lie? Like you've been the lead actor in a movie you didn't even audition for? Yeah, that's me. One simple DNA test was all it took to pull the rug out from under me. Turns out, my kids aren't even mine. And my loving wife? Well, she's been keeping that little secret tucked away for years. It started with a joke. My buddy, Mark, got one of those ancestry DNA tests for his birthday, and he found out he was 10% Italian. Suddenly, he's walking around like he's in The Godfather, talking with his hands and pronouncing mozzarella like he grew up in Naples. He dared me to take a test, just for fun. I laughed, shrugged, and said, why not? A couple of weeks later, the results came in. No big surprises, except for one tiny, soul-crushing detail: my two boys, the kids I had spent years raising, didn't share my DNA. At first, I thought there had to be a mistake. Maybe they mixed up the samples. Maybe I was just bad at understanding charts. But deep down, I knew. I knew before I even got the second test. I stared at those results for what felt like hours. My hands were shaking. My stomach felt like it had been hollowed out. I could hear my boys laughing in the living room, playing with their Legos, oblivious to the bomb that had just gone off in my life. I needed answers. People like to say hindsight is 20/20, but let me tell you something, hindsight is actually a cruel, sadistic little bastard. Once you know the truth, every little thing that seemed normal at the time suddenly looks like a giant neon sign flashing, "Wake up, idiot." And trust me, there were plenty of those signs. I just didn't want to see them. Before I even took the DNA test, I had a hunch. Nothing I could put my finger on, nothing concrete, just a gut feeling. The kind of feeling you shove to the back of your mind because it doesn't make sense, because you don't want it to make sense. My wife, Sarah, and I had been together for over a decade. High school sweethearts, college together, the whole fairy tale setup. We got married in our mid-20s and had our first son a couple of years later. By the time our second son came along, we were deep into the routine of life: work, bills, kids, repeat. At first, things were good. More than good. Sarah was my best friend, my partner in crime, the woman I thought I'd grow old with. But over time, something changed. It started with little things. She was always on her phone, more than usual. At first, I chalked it up to boredom or stress. Maybe she was just scrolling social media like everybody else. But sometimes, I'd catch her smiling at her screen, then quickly locking it when she saw me looking. "Who's that?" I'd ask, trying to keep my voice light, playful. "Just a group chat with the girls," she'd reply. Always the same answer. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the way she said it never sat right with me. Then there were the nights out. Sarah had never been much of a party girl, not even in college. But all of a sudden, she started going out more. Girls' nights, she called them. At first, it was once every couple of months. Then it was once a month. Then it was every other weekend. "Babe, you never used to go out this much," I pointed out one night as she got ready. She laughed, rolling her eyes. "What, I'm not allowed to have fun? Just because I'm a mom doesn't mean I have to stay locked in the house." "That's not what I meant." "Then what do you mean?" I didn't have an answer. Because technically, she wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just going out with friends. Having a drink or two. Blowing off steam. At least, that's what I told myself. Then came the work conferences. Sarah worked in marketing for some mid-sized firm. She had always gone to the occasional out-of-town meeting, but suddenly, these conferences were happening every few months. Always in a nice hotel. Always for the weekend. They just started sending you to these all of a sudden. I asked one night, watching her pack. She shrugged. "I got a promotion, remember? More responsibility, more travel." It made sense. It really did. But when she came home from these trips, she always seemed different. Distant. Like she had to mentally shift back into her role as my wife. And the way she avoided intimacy afterward? That was another red flag. I'd try to get close to her, kiss her neck, run my hands down her back, she'd tense up, push me away with a forced smile. "I'm just exhausted, babe." These trips were me out. At first, I accepted it. But exhaustion doesn't last for weeks. Then there was the one night that really made me stop and think. She had gone out with her friends, at least, that's what she told me. But she came home too late. Not just bar closing late. 4 a.m. late. I heard the front door creak open, heard her heels clumsily tapping against the hardwood. I waited in bed, listening as she tried, and failed, to sneak into the bathroom. The smell of alcohol hit me before she even spoke. "Hey," she slurred, trying to act normal. "Why are you still awake?" "Couldn't sleep," I lied. She giggled, swaying slightly. "I had such a fun night." "Yeah. What did you guys do?" She hesitated. "Just for a second. Barely noticeable. Oh, you know. Drinks, dancing, the usual." That pause told me everything I needed to know. It was a small thing, barely there, but I caught it. Something inside me twisted. "You didn't answer your phone," I said casually. She blinked, processing. "Huh. I called. A couple of times. Just to see if you needed a ride." She waved me off. "Oh, babe, you know how loud those places get." I probably didn't hear it. I nodded, pretending to buy it. But my mind was already racing. If she was with her friends, why hadn't she at least texted back? Why didn't she ever call me to check in, even after a night of drinking? And why, when I hugged her, did I smell cologne that wasn't mine? That was the night I knew. Maybe not consciously, but deep down, I knew. I just wasn't ready to face it yet. So I let it slide. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was overthinking things. I reminded myself that Sarah had never given me a reason to doubt her before. But once that seed of doubt was planted, it grew. And it wasn't long before I found something I couldn't ignore. A text. One stupid, careless text that changed everything. A man doesn't want to believe his wife is cheating on him. He'll take all the little warning signs and smooth them out, convince himself they're nothing, that he's just overthinking. He does it because the alternative is too painful. The alternative means the life he built is crumbling under his feet. That was me. I had doubts, I had questions, but I told myself I was imagining things. It wasn't until the little things piled up into something I couldn't ignore that I was forced to accept the truth. Looking back, should have known. I did know, but I didn't want to be the guy whose marriage was a lie. Sarah and I had been together for years. We met when we were barely out of our teens, young and full of ideas about how our lives would turn out. I was never the kind of guy who needed much. Give me a steady job, a house to call my own, and a family, and I'd be set. Sarah, though, she was always looking for more. When we first got together, it felt like she loved the simplicity of our life. We had weekend barbecues with friends, lazy Sundays on the couch, road trips where we'd eat gas station snacks and talk about our dreams. We got married, we had kids, and for a long time, I thought we were happy. Then things started to shift. It wasn't sudden, and that's what made it so easy to ignore at first. It was subtle. Sarah started caring more about how she looked when she went out, wearing perfume and doing her hair just to go to the grocery store. She got her nails done, something she never used to care about. I told myself she just wanted to feel good about herself. Then there were the late-night phone calls. She'd take her phone into another room, laugh at messages she never shared with me. If I asked, she'd just say it was her friends from the gym, the group chat she was in. I never pushed it. I figured, hell, she's allowed to have friends. But then there were nights she'd come home late, acting strange. One night, she smelled like whiskey and something else I couldn't quite place, like another person's skin, if that makes sense. She tried to climb into bed without waking me, but I wasn't asleep. I rolled over, blinking at her. "Late night?" I muttered. "Yeah," she said, her voice too light, too casual. "We just stayed out a little longer than planned." "Who all was there?" She hesitated. "Just a beat too long. You know. The usual." I let it go, but it sat in the back of my mind like a splinter. I started noticing other things. She'd get text messages late at night and angle her phone away from me. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd suddenly put her phone face down on the table. When I asked why, she laughed it off. "Since when do you care what's on my phone?" she teased, but there was something defensive under her voice. The biggest red flag came a few months before I took the DNA test. We had a big family gathering planned at her parents' house. I was supposed to drive separately because I had some errands to run first, but at the last minute, I finished early and decided to surprise her by riding together. I pulled up to the house, expecting to see her car in the driveway. It wasn't there. I called her, and she didn't pick up. 5 minutes later, she called back, breathless. "Hey. Sorry, I was inside helping Mom set up," she said. "Are you on your way?" "I'm in the driveway," I said, my stomach twisting. There was a long silence. "Oh. I just ran out to grab some extra ice," she said. I knew she was lying. The tremor in her voice, the way she wasn't expecting me to be there, it told me everything. But I didn't say anything. I just waited. A few minutes later, she pulled up, a little out of breath, her hair slightly messed up. And she did have a bag of ice in the passenger seat, like she had just bought it. But something felt off. That night, I kept replaying it in my head. The rushed phone call. The delay. The way she acted like she hadn't expected me to be there. And most of all, the feeling in my gut, the one screaming that something wasn't right. I wish I could say I confronted her then, but I didn't. I still told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. I loved Sarah, and love makes you blind. I had a good life, a family, and I wasn't ready to believe it was all built on a lie. Then, one night, I saw something I couldn't explain away. It was late, past midnight, and Sarah was asleep beside me. Her phone buzzed. I wouldn't have thought much of it, but something made me glance over. The screen lit up, showing a message from a number with no name. Just the words, "I miss you already." I stared at it, my heart pounding. Before I could react, the screen went dark, and Sarah stirred beside me, shifting in her sleep. The next morning, I checked her phone while she was in the shower. I felt sick doing it, like I was betraying her somehow, but I needed to know. There was no message. No unknown number. She had deleted it. That was when I knew. Not just suspected, not just worried, knew. My wife was cheating on me. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I watched. I paid closer attention. I noticed the way she smiled at her phone, the way she would suddenly leave the room when she got a call. I started keeping track of when she left the house, how long she was gone, how vague her explanations were. The worst part? I started looking at my boys differently. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't help it. Something in the back of my mind kept whispering, what if? And that's when I decided to take the DNA test. I told myself it was just curiosity, just a way to prove my fears wrong. But deep down, I already knew what the results would say. And when they came back, confirming what I had feared the most, that the boys I had loved and raised weren't biologically mine, I finally understood what my gut had been screaming at me for years. Everything I had built was a lie. Sarah was always smart, too smart for her own good. She had a way of reading me, of knowing when something was off, even before I said a word. I wasn't confrontational by nature, and she knew it. I didn't yell, I didn't push, and I didn't play mind games. I was the guy who took people at their word, who gave the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that's why I was such an easy mark. The day after I saw that deleted message on her phone, she started acting different. At first, it was subtle, little things that most people wouldn't even notice. She was more affectionate, touching my arm when she walked by, kissing my cheek for no reason. She laughed at my jokes a little too easily, lingered a little longer when we talked. She even cooked dinner a few times, which was something she hadn't done in years. At first, I wanted to believe it. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe I was paranoid, reading too much into things. Maybe she really was just a little distant because of stress or work or the kids. But no matter how much she tried to smooth things over, I saw it for what it was, damage control. Sarah must have sensed a shift in me, something in the way I looked at her, the way I carried myself. Maybe she saw me watching her too closely. Maybe she caught me glancing at her phone a second too long. Or maybe it was just that gut instinct that cheaters develop, the one that tells them when they're being watched. Whatever it was, she decided to lay low for a while. For the next few weeks, everything felt almost normal. She didn't go out as much. No more late-night, girls' nights, no more last-minute errands that kept her out for hours. She made a point to be home more, to be more present. It was like she had flipped a switch, suddenly playing the role of the perfect wife. But it was just that, a role. A performance. I watched closely, waiting for the cracks to show, because I knew they would. And sure enough, they did. One night, we were sitting on the couch watching TV. Sarah was curled up beside me, her head resting against my shoulder. It had been a long time since we sat like that. Too long. She had a glass of wine in her hand, her fingers absently tracing circles against my arm. "You okay?" she asked suddenly. I glanced at her. Yeah. Why? She shrugged, taking a sip of her wine. You've just been quiet lately. I forced a small smile. Just work stuff. That was the lie she wanted to hear. If I was stressed about work, then I wasn't stressed about her. She nodded, accepting it easily. But I wasn't the only one who had changed. She had too. For all her effort to act normal, she was still slipping up. I started noticing how she'd check her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Not as often as before, she was careful now, but still enough that I caught it. If I walked into the room unexpectedly, she'd put her phone down fast, like she didn't want me to see the screen. Sometimes, she'd leave it in another room completely, something she never used to do. Then there were the phone calls. Sarah had always been a talker, she could be on the phone for hours with her sister or her mom. But now, if her phone rang and I was in the room, she'd let it go to voicemail. Or she'd step outside, pretending she needed some air. One night, I decided to test something. We were in bed, the room dark, the only sound the occasional hum of the ceiling fan. I rolled over, reaching for her, resting my hand on her hip. She stiffened. Just for a second. Then, she relaxed, forcing herself to melt into me. I kissed the back of her neck, waiting. She sighed softly. I'm tired, babe. You sure? I murmured against her skin. She hesitated. A beat too long. Yeah, just exhausted. Long day. That was when I knew she was still seeing him. For months, she had been avoiding me. But once she started pretending to be the perfect wife again, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd at least try to be intimate with me. To make it seem like everything was fine. But she couldn't do it. Whatever she had with him, it was real enough that she couldn't bring herself to fake it with me. She had smoothed things over just enough to make herself feel safe again. She was playing it smart, keeping a low profile. But she hadn't stopped. No, Sarah was just getting better at covering her tracks. And I needed proof. At this point, I wasn't just looking for signs, I wanted something concrete. Something undeniable. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. I waited until she was asleep, curled up on her side, breathing evenly. Her phone was on the nightstand, plugged in. I knew the password, I had always known it. But as I picked it up, my hands were shaking. I felt sick. I didn't want to do this. I wanted to be wrong. But I wasn't. She had deleted everything. No messages. No calls. No texts that looked suspicious. It was clean. Too clean. A person doesn't just delete all their messages for no reason. I checked her recently deleted photos. Nothing. Her email. Nothing. Then, I checked her location history. And there it was. A hotel. Twice in the last month. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my ears. She had been careful. But not careful enough. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, laid back down beside her, and stared at the ceiling. I had my proof. Now, I just needed to decide what to do with it. For the next few days, I walked around feeling like a ghost in my own life. Everything looked the same, my house, my wife, my kids, but it wasn't real anymore. It was a set, a stage, and I was the only one who knew we were acting. Sarah went about her routine like nothing was wrong. She smiled at me in the mornings, packed the kids' lunches, kissed me before I left for work. If I didn't know the truth, I would have thought we were the picture of a happy family. But now, I saw her for what she was, someone living a double life, a woman who had mastered the art of deception. I kept waiting for her to slip up. She was careful, but nobody can cover their tracks forever. I watched how she checked her phone at odd moments, always keeping it close. I saw the way she'd get quiet when I mentioned random things, like when I offhandedly said I drove past the Radcliffe Hotel the other day. She didn't flinch, but I caught the way her fingers clenched just a little tighter around her coffee cup. She covered it up with a sip, but it was too late. I saw it. At night, I lay beside her, pretending to sleep while my mind ran in circles. She smelled different now, like perfume that wasn't hers, a lingering scent that didn't match the one she usually wore. There were times she'd come home late, slip into bed with her back turned to me, thinking I was already asleep. I'd listen to her breathing, slow and steady, but there were nights where she was restless, shifting, sighing, like something was weighing on her. Maybe guilt. Maybe not. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. It took everything in me not to confront her, not to explode and demand the truth. But I knew if I did that now, she'd deny it. She'd spin it, make me feel crazy. I needed more. The hotel visits were proof enough for me, but I wanted something undeniable. So I decided to push her. Just a little. One evening, while we were having dinner, I casually mentioned that I had been thinking about taking a few days off work. Might be nice to just be home for a bit, I said, watching her carefully. Sarah froze for just half a second before recovering. Oh. That's nice, she said, stabbing at her salad. Any particular reason? Nah, I shrugged. Just feeling like I need a break. Maybe spend some extra time with you and the boys. Her smile was tight, forced. That's sweet. But won't things pile up at work? She was testing the waters, seeing how serious I was. Yeah, maybe, I said, pretending to think. But I'll figure it out. Besides, it'd be nice to just, I don't know, have some lazy mornings with you. I reached across the table and took her hand, running my thumb over her skin. She flinched. It was tiny, almost imperceptible, but I felt it. That's when I knew, she was still seeing him, and my little schedule change was messing with her routine. That night, she initiated sex for the first time in months. I let it happen, playing my role, but I wasn't really there. I wasn't touching my wife, I was touching a stranger who was trying to manipulate me, trying to make me forget the feeling in my gut. When it was over, she curled up against me, tracing lazy circles on my chest. I feel like we've been distant lately, she murmured. Distant? I asked, playing dumb. Yeah. I don't know, I miss us. The us she was talking about didn't exist anymore. But I played along. I miss us too, I said, kissing her forehead. She sighed in what sounded like relief. I had just given her the reassurance she was looking for. She thought she had smoothed things over again, that I was buying into her act. But I wasn't. 2 days later, she told me she needed to go visit her sister for the weekend. She's been having a rough time lately, she explained, leaning against the kitchen counter while I sipped my coffee. I figured I'd keep her company. That's nice of you, I said, keeping my face neutral. Where does she live again? She blinked. Just once. You know where she lives, babe. I smiled. Right. Just slipped my mind. It was a lie. Her sister lived 3 hours away. But I knew Sarah wasn't going to see her. She was going to see him. That weekend, I followed her. I felt ridiculous at first, like some guy in a bad detective movie, but I didn't care. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I waited until she packed her bag, kissed the kids goodbye, and got into her car. Then I got into mine and tailed her from a distance. She didn't go to her sister's house. She drove straight to the Radcliffe Hotel. I sat in my car across the street, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded in my ears as I watched her walk into the lobby, rolling her suitcase behind her. She didn't even hesitate. She knew where she was going, which room she was headed to. A few minutes later, a man walked in. Mid-30s, tall, fit, wearing a suit like he had just come from work. He didn't even look around, just strolled right in like he owned the place. I knew, without a doubt, that this was him. My vision blurred with rage as I watched him disappear inside. Sarah had gotten comfortable. She thought she had everything under control. She thought I was blind. She had no idea what was coming. After that night outside the hotel, something inside me broke. I didn't lash out, didn't storm in and demand answers, didn't throw punches at the smug bastard who met my wife in the lobby like he owned her. No. That would have been too easy for her. If I lost control, she'd twist it against me. She'd say I was paranoid, that I was the problem, that this was why she had pulled away. I wasn't going to give her that out. Instead, I did something worse. I went cold. That was the moment I started detaching from Sarah. I drove home in silence, my grip so tight on the steering wheel that my knuckles went white. When I walked into the house, everything looked the same, our family photos on the wall, the kids' toys scattered across the floor, the faint smell of lavender laundry detergent in the air. But I wasn't home anymore. I was just a stranger in a place that used to belong to me. Sarah had texted me earlier, saying she had arrived at her sister's house safely. I stared at the message for a long time, my jaw clenched, but I didn't reply. Let her wonder why. Let her feel something off. Maybe, just for a second, she'd feel even a fraction of the dread that had been sitting in my stomach for weeks. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house I had built for my family. My boys were asleep in their rooms, unaware that everything they knew was about to come crashing down. I wanted to protect them from this, to keep their world intact, but how could I, when I didn't even know what was real anymore? And then, like a spark in the dark, I remembered something stupid. Mark's damn DNA test. A month ago, my buddy Mark had gotten one of those ancestry kits as a gift. He found out he was 10% Italian, and suddenly, he was walking around like he was straight out of The Godfather, waving his hands when he talked and butchering Italian words like he had just stepped off a plane from Naples. He had been bugging me to take one too, just for fun. I had laughed it off at the time. But now, lying there in the dark, something in me shifted. At first, the idea was ridiculous. But the longer I thought about it, the more it dug into my brain like a splinter. I had spent years loving my sons, never questioning for a second that they were mine. But now, for the first time in my life, I felt something ugly. A doubt that made my stomach twist. I didn't even realize I had made my decision until I was already reaching for my phone. A few minutes later, I had ordered the test. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and told myself I was just doing it to prove myself wrong. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Sarah came home Sunday evening, playing her role to perfection. She hugged the boys, kissed my cheek, and told me all about the weekend at her sister's. I nodded at the right moments, forcing myself to smile. I could feel her eyes on me, searching for something, maybe checking to see if I suspected anything. But I didn't give her anything to work with. "You okay?" she asked as we got ready for bed. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I had built my life around. The woman who had lied to me so easily. "Yeah," I said finally. "Just tired." She bought it. For the next few days, I distanced myself just enough to keep her off balance. I stopped texting her throughout the day. Stopped kissing her goodbye in the mornings. Stopped making conversation at dinner. And every time she asked if I was okay, I just said, "Yeah. Just tired." She could feel the shift, I knew she could. She started acting sweeter, touching me more, trying to fill the silence with fake laughter. It was textbook guilt. Or maybe just manipulation. I didn't care which. Then, the DNA test arrived. That night, while Sarah was at the gym, I sat the boys down and made it into a game. "Let's see if we have the same special family traits," I told them, keeping my voice light. They giggled, thinking it was just another silly thing Dad was doing. They had no idea what was really at stake. I sent the samples out the next morning. Then, I waited. The longest 2 weeks of my life. Sarah, of course, had no idea. She went about her routine, thinking she had smoothed everything over. But every time she laughed, it sounded fake. Every time she hugged me, I felt nothing. Every time she called them our boys, my stomach turned. Then, the results came in. I sat in my truck, parked outside the house, staring at the email. My hands were shaking as I opened it, my heart pounding. I skimmed past the formal wording, searching for the only thing that mattered. And then I saw it. Probability of paternity, 0%. I don't know how long I sat there. Time had stopped. I had suspected it. I had known it. But knowing wasn't the same as seeing it. The boys weren't mine. Not my blood. Not my legacy. And yet, they were still my boys. I had raised them. Held them when they cried. Taught them how to throw a football. Read them bedtime stories when they couldn't sleep. But Sarah had taken everything from me. I shut off my truck and walked inside, my head strangely clear. Sarah was standing in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, sipping a glass of wine. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, babe. How was your day?" I walked right past her. Didn't answer. I went to our bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. I heard her footsteps a second later. What are you doing?" I zipped up the bag. Looked her dead in the eye. "I know, Sarah." Her face went pale. "Know what?" I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and held it up for her to see. The DNA results. She didn't even try to deny it. Didn't gasp, didn't cry, didn't act shocked. She just stood there, frozen, her hands trembling. I nodded. That was all the confirmation I needed. I'll be staying somewhere else for a while, I said. I'll figure out the rest later. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Wait, she choked out. Please, don't do this. Let's talk. I turned back, looking at the woman I had once loved. We should have talked years ago, Sarah, I said. Before you burned everything to the ground. Then I walked out. Walking away from Sarah should have felt like a win. I had my proof, my closure, my freedom. But betrayal doesn't just disappear overnight. It lingers, like the smell of something rotten you can't quite find. I had left the house with nothing but a duffel bag, convinced I needed space to clear my head. I crashed at my buddy Mark's place, yeah, the same Mark who had unknowingly set this whole thing in motion with his dumb DNA test joke. You tell me when you're ready, was all he said, handing me a beer and turning on the TV. No prying, no fake sympathy. Just silence and football. It was exactly what I needed. Sarah, though. She didn't waste any time. At first, the texts were relentless. Sarah, please, talk to me. I need to explain. Sarah, this isn't what you think. It was a mistake, but it doesn't change what we have. Sarah, ignoring me isn't fair. Then came the voicemails. Listen, I know you're angry, and I deserve that. But this is still our family. You can't just run away. I was young, I was stupid, I made a mistake. But you're just going to throw everything away because of something from years ago? I need you to stop acting like a victim. You're not the only one hurting. Oh, that last one was Rich. I wasn't the only one hurting. I stared at my phone, wondering if she actually believed that or if she was just trying to mess with my head. Either way, I wasn't taking the bait. For the next few days, I ignored every attempt she made to reach me. And that's when she switched tactics. Instead of pleading, she went for guilt. Sarah, the boys have been asking about you. What do you want me to tell them? Sarah, they're confused. They don't understand why their dad abandoned them. Sarah, I hope you're happy. They cried themselves to sleep tonight. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Abandoned them? No, I hadn't abandoned them, I had walked away from her. But she knew exactly how to twist the knife, didn't she? She knew the boys were my weak spot. That was the one thing she still had over me. And then, because she was Sarah, she escalated. 2 days later, Mark opened the door and found her standing there, looking picture-perfect in her distressed, helpless wife act. Tear-streaked cheeks, trembling lips, the whole I'm just a woman trying to hold my family together routine. Can we talk? She asked, voice soft and pleading. Mark crossed his arms. I don't think that's a good idea. I just need 5 minutes. Her eyes flickered toward me, standing behind him in the living room. Please. I sighed. Fine. Mark gave me a don't be an idiot look, but stepped aside. Sarah walked in like she owned the place, like this was still her territory. I sat on the couch, arms crossed, waiting. She sat beside me, too close, her fingers brushing against my knee. I don't even know where to start, she whispered, sniffling. I never wanted to hurt you. I said nothing. She took a deep breath. Look, I know I messed up, okay? I know. But I have spent every single day since trying to be a good wife, a good mother. Doesn't that count for something? I let out a cold laugh. That's your angle. Yeah, I cheated, but I baked cookies, so it evens out. She narrowed her eyes. The act cracked, just a little. It was one mistake. No, Sarah. It was a choice. A series of choices. And then you lied about it for years. She exhaled sharply, shifting gears again. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. And I did everything to make up for it. But you just left. Just like that. You didn't even think about the kids, did you? Ah. There it was. I leaned back, jaw tightening. You really want to play that card? I'm not playing anything, she snapped, dropping the wounded act. They're your boys, and you're just going to walk away. Because you're angry at me? Something inside me snapped. I stood up, towering over her. They're not mine. She flinched. I shook my head, forcing myself to breathe. I love them. I raised them. But you made sure they were never mine. And now, you want to guilt me into staying. Sarah's eyes flashed with something dangerous. Oh, please, she sneered, her voice dripping with venom. You really think that matters? Biology? Like that's what makes a father? You think they'll give a shit about DNA when they realize you abandoned them? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. And she knew it. She stood up, stepping closer, voice dropping into something almost smug. You are their father. And if you walk away now, you're proving that you never really loved them. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. She wasn't just manipulative, she was a master at it. She had years of practice, after all. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. They're not the ones I'm walking away from, Sarah. You are. Her nostrils flared. Fine. Go. Be a coward. But don't come crawling back when they start asking why Daddy doesn't love them anymore. I turned toward the door. And just before I walked out, she threw one final grenade. You should be thanking me, you know, she called after me. Because without me, you'd never even have a family. I stopped for a second. Then I exhaled, shook my head, and walked out. I wasn't going to let her win. The first few days after I walked out were strangely quiet. Sarah stopped calling, stopped texting, and for a moment, I wondered if she had finally accepted reality. Maybe she had realized there was nothing she could say or do to manipulate her way out of this. Maybe she knew the game was over. But I should have known better. Sarah didn't lose. She regrouped, re-strategized, and came back swinging. It started small. When I showed up to see the boys, they were distant. Not cold, not angry, just confused. Hesitant. I could tell they had questions they didn't know how to ask. I hugged them, tried to keep things normal, but something felt off. Later that night, as I tucked them into bed, my youngest looked up at me and whispered, "Mommy said you don't want to be our dad anymore." I froze, my stomach turning to ice. My grip on the blanket tightened as I forced myself to keep my voice steady. She said that? He nodded, his little face scrunching up, trying to understand something no kid should have to think about. She said you don't love us. I sat there, feeling like I had been punched in the gut. I wanted to march downstairs and drag Sarah into the living room, force her to look me in the eye and explain why she would say something so cruel. But I knew how that would go. She'd play dumb, act shocked, pretend the kids had misunderstood her. Or worse, she'd cry, flip it back on me, tell me I was the one who abandoned my family. I had seen her manipulate people for years, twisting words until even the truth felt like a lie. So instead, I took a deep breath, swallowed the rage, and looked my son in the eye. That's not true, I said gently. I love you so much. And nothing will ever change that. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he wasn't sure what to believe. Sarah had planted the seed of doubt, and I was going to have to fight like hell to undo it. The next time I came to pick them up, Sarah made sure to make things even harder. The boys were crying before they even got to the door, and when I asked what was wrong, she appeared behind them, arms crossed, a self-satisfied smirk hidden beneath a mask of concern. I don't know, babe, she said, voice dripping with false sympathy. I think they're just scared. They don't understand why their father doesn't live here anymore. The way she said father, like it was a dirty word, made my hands clench into fists. She was doing this on purpose. She wanted them emotional, wanted me to feel like the villain. I didn't take the bait. I knelt down, spoke softly, reassured them. But I could feel Sarah watching me, waiting for me to break. And if trying to turn the kids against me wasn't enough, she started working on everyone else, too. I started getting strange texts from mutual friends. Hey man, I heard about what's going on, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Others were less subtle. I don't know what's gotten into you, but abandoning your family. That's low, dude. It didn't take long to figure out why. Sarah had been spreading her version of events, painting herself as the heartbroken wife left behind while I ran off. Of course, she left out the part about the DNA test. The affair. The hotel. No, in her version, I was just some selfish, midlife crisis asshole who walked out on his innocent wife and kids. She made sure to phrase things carefully, just vague enough that people could fill in the blanks themselves. And it worked. People who had once been our friends started looking at me differently. The sympathetic nods, the hushed whispers when I walked into a room. It was humiliating, infuriating, but worst of all, it was calculated. I thought that was the worst of it, but then she tried something even lower. One night, out of nowhere, she called. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me I should. When I answered, her voice was soft, almost shaky. I miss you, she whispered. I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was going. I miss us. She sighed, dragging out the silence, letting the weight of those words settle in. I don't want to fight anymore. I don't know, I've been thinking a lot, and I don't want to throw everything away over one mistake. There it was. The hook. She wasn't apologizing, she was reframing it. Making it sound like I was the one who was overreacting, like I was the one who had to decide whether we stayed together. I let her talk, let her spin her little fantasy about how we could fix this. And then, just when I thought she couldn't get any more shameless, she dropped the real bomb. Maybe we should have another baby. I actually laughed. A short, bitter laugh that made her pause. You're serious? She huffed, annoyed that I wasn't immediately falling for it. I just think. I don't know, maybe this is a sign. Maybe we lost sight of what really matters, and starting fresh could bring us back together. I leaned forward, gripping the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. Sarah, I said slowly, are you actually suggesting that after lying to me for years about the kids I already have, I should give you another one? She let out a dramatic sigh. I didn't lie. I hung up. That should have been the end of it. But Sarah wasn't done yet. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. It didn't take a genius to figure out who it was. The other man. The biological father. The guy whose kids I had been raising for years. I stared at the message, debating whether to respond. Did I even want to meet this guy? Did I want to put a face to the betrayal? Part of me did. Part of me wanted to look him in the eye, to see what kind of pathetic, spineless bastard had let another man raise his children without ever stepping up. So I agreed. We met at a bar, neutral ground. He was younger than me, barely mid-30s, with that cocky, I've gotten away with it smirk that made me want to put my fist through his face. Listen, man, he started, like we were two old buddies sorting out a misunderstanding. I just wanted to say. I didn't know. Not at first. I said nothing. I mean, Sarah told me she was married, but she made it seem like you guys were, not really a thing anymore. He shrugged, sipping his beer. And by the time I found out about the kids, it was just, easier this way, I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Easier? He held up his hands. I mean, look, man, you were already their dad. I wasn't gonna come in and mess that up. Plus, Sarah said it was better for everyone if we just left things alone. I stared at him, feeling a cold, quiet rage settle over me. This guy had gotten off easy. He had his fun, then sat back and let me clean up the mess. And now? Now he just wanted to clear the air and move on with his life. I leaned in, my voice dangerously calm. Let me make something clear. I don't give a damn what you thought or what Sarah told you. But if you ever try to come near those kids, my kids, I will make you regret it. His smirk faltered. Good. I stood up, threw some cash on the table, and walked out. I had wasted enough time on these people. Sarah thought she could manipulate me into staying. She thought she could guilt me, seduce me, rewrite history to make herself the victim. But she underestimated one thing: when I walked away, I wasn't coming back. I had convinced myself that Sarah had already hit rock bottom, that there wasn't much lower she could go. I was wrong. She still had tricks up her sleeve, still had ways to twist the knife deeper. The battle wasn't over, she was just getting started. At first, I tried to keep my head down and focus on rebuilding my life. I found a small apartment, started seeing the boys on weekends, and did my best to ignore the rumors Sarah was spreading. She had managed to turn some of our mutual friends against me, painting herself as the abandoned wife while carefully leaving out every damning detail. I heard whispers at the grocery store, felt the judgmental stares at school pickups. But I could handle that. What I wasn't prepared for was how much she would enjoy rubbing her new life in my face. One Friday, I dropped the boys off at the house. Sarah came to the door looking like she had spent hours getting ready, full makeup, hair styled, wearing a dress that was too fancy for a night of staying in. I knew the look. I had seen it before, back when I still thought she was getting dressed up for me. The boys ran inside, and as I turned to leave, Sarah leaned against the doorway, a smirk playing on her lips. Got plans tonight? She asked casually. I didn't answer. She sighed dramatically. Shame. You should really try dating. Or maybe you're just not over me yet. I gritted my teeth, willing myself to walk away, but she wasn't done. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. You should probably find a way to move on soon. I have. I should have kept walking. I should have ignored her. But I made the mistake of looking back, just in time to see a man step into the hallway behind her. He was tall, confident, wearing a button-down like he had just come from work. I didn't recognize him, but I knew exactly who he was. Sarah turned slightly, just enough to let him place a hand on her hip. "Oh," she said, her voice full of mock sympathy. "I don't think you two have met." I stared at her, my blood boiling. She wanted me to react. She wanted me to lose it. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Without a word, I turned and walked back to my car, feeling her eyes on me the entire time. I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to calm down, but the rage sat heavy in my chest. I knew she was doing this to get under my skin, and damn it, it was working. But even then, I didn't realize how far she would take it. That night, I made the mistake of going back to the house. I told myself it was to check on the boys, but deep down, I knew it was about something else. I pulled up across the street, parked in the shadows, and just sat there, staring at the house that used to be mine. The lights were on in the bedroom. I saw silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Then I heard it. A loud smack, followed by a high-pitched moan. Another slap. A rhythmic sound of movement. More moaning. The unmistakable sounds of a woman who wanted to be heard. Sarah wasn't just cheating, she was performing. Making sure that if I was anywhere nearby, I would hear every second of it. I gripped the steering wheel, feeling my pulse hammer in my ears. It was one thing to know she had moved on, but this? This was intentional. A message. A final way to humiliate me. I sat there for what felt like hours, listening to the woman I once loved tear down the last shred of dignity I had left. And then, I did the only thing I could. I drove away that I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my back in my cramped apartment, staring at the ceiling, hearing every sound from the neighbors through the paper-thin walls. Some guy was arguing with his girlfriend. A dog barked down the hall. A baby cried somewhere above me. But all I could hear, over and over, was the sound of Sarah, laughing, moaning, making sure I knew just how little I mattered anymore. I should have let it go. I should have taken this as my final push to move on, to stop wasting energy on a woman who had long since stopped being my wife. But my brain wouldn't let it rest. I felt like I had lost everything, my home, my reputation, my family, and she had just waltzed into a new life like I had never even existed. She got the house, the kids, a brand new man, and somehow I was the one left picking up the pieces. The next day, I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I had taken the boys to the park, trying to enjoy some time with them without the weight of everything else hanging over me. They were laughing, running around, climbing on the jungle gym. For a brief moment, it felt normal. Then I saw her. She was standing at the edge of the playground, wearing sunglasses and sipping an iced coffee like she hadn't just emotionally gutted me the night before. And she wasn't alone. The man, the one from the house, was standing beside her, one arm lazily draped around her waist. He said something, and she laughed, leaning into him. I turned back to the boys, forcing myself to focus on them. But I could feel Sarah watching me. She waited until they were distracted before she made her move, walking over with that same smug smirk I had come to hate. "Didn't think I'd run into you here," she said, voice light, casual, like we were two old friends catching up. I didn't look at her. "What do you want, Sarah?" She sighed dramatically. "You really need to stop sulking. It's embarrassing." I turned then, finally meeting her gaze. "You think this is funny?" She tilted her head, pretending to think. "A little." I clenched my teeth, forcing myself to stay calm. "You're a piece of work, you know that." She shrugged. "Oh, I'm the bad guy. You're the one who abandoned your family over a DNA test. I never asked you to take that stupid thing." I let out a bitter laugh. "Right. So it's my fault you lied to me for years? My fault you let me raise kids that aren't mine?" She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so dramatic. They're still yours, but you were too much of a coward to handle it." I felt my fingers twitch at my sides. "You don't feel even a little guilty, do you?" She smiled. "No, actually, I don't. Because you were never going to leave me." "Not really. You needed an excuse. And the moment you found one, you ran like a little boy who got his feelings hurt." I stared at her, my stomach twisting. The woman I had married, the woman I had loved, was long gone. Maybe she had never even existed in the first place. She leaned in, lowering her voice so only I could hear. You think I needed you? That I ever lost sleep over you leaving? Please. I replaced you before you even walked out the door. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay in control. You know what, Sarah? Enjoy your new life. You deserve each other. She grinned. Oh, I already am. Then she turned and walked back to her new man, slipping her arm through his like she hadn't just spat on the last decade of our lives. I stood there, watching her walk away, feeling something inside me crack. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to leave and rebuild my life. I was supposed to be free from her. But she still had her hooks in me, still knew how to make every wound deeper. And the worst part? She had one. She had the kids. The house. The social circle. And I had nothing. No closure. No justice. No victory. Just an empty apartment and a long road ahead. I looked back at my boys, still laughing, still unaware of the war their mother and I were waging. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight for revenge. I wouldn't waste my life trying to make Sarah pay. But I would fight for them. No matter what she did, no matter how much she tried to rewrite history, they would always know that I loved them. Even if she had taken everything else from me, she wasn't going to take that. I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and walked back toward my kids. Sarah had won this battle. That's all. Update. It's been a while since everything went down, and I figured I owed you all an update. A lot has changed. Some for the worse, but mostly for the better. Back then, when I walked away from Sarah, I felt like I had lost everything, my family, my home, my sense of who I was. But looking back now, I see it differently. I didn't lose my life. I got a second chance to build a new one. And that's exactly what I did. I won't lie and say it was easy. For a while, things were rough. I had to rebuild myself from the ground up, get used to the idea that the life I had spent years creating wasn't real. There were days when I was angry, nights when I lay awake thinking about all the ways I could have handled things differently. But the thing about hitting rock bottom is that there's only one way to go after that, up. The best part? I still see my boys. I made damn sure that Sarah wouldn't take them away from me, and despite everything she pulled, she never could erase the fact that I was their dad. I see them every weekend, we talk almost every night, and no matter how much she tries to spin things, they know who's always been there for them. That's something she can never take away. And as for me? Well. I met someone. Her name is Emily. And before you roll your eyes and think this is some kind of fairy tale ending, trust me, I didn't see it coming either. I wasn't looking for love. Hell, I wasn't even looking for casual dating. But somehow, she found me anyway. Emily isn't like Sarah. She doesn't play games, doesn't manipulate, doesn't make me feel like I'm constantly walking on thin ice. She's kind. She's honest. She's the kind of woman who texts just to see how my day is going, who listens when I talk instead of waiting for her turn to speak. And the best part? She loves my boys like they're her own. We've been together for almost a year now, and we're planning to move in together soon. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I have a real future, one that isn't built on lies. And Sarah? Well, she's still Sarah. Still bitter, still trying to control every situation, still pretending she's the victim in a story she created. But here's the thing, I don't care anymore. She doesn't get to live rent-free in my head. She's just a chapter in my life, and I've already turned the page. So if you're out there going through something similar, if you're feeling lost, feeling like your world just got torn apart, trust me when I say this, it gets better. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day you'll wake up and realize that the person who broke you isn't even worth a second thought. You'll move on. You'll heal. And if you're lucky, you'll find someone who shows you what love is supposed to feel like. I know I did. The real end. Bye-bye.